Hello, everyone. All right. So today is the first day. It will be basically the introductory class, wherein I'll be just since there is a different from different area. I have the participants and from different level, UGPG level. So what I'm doing is I wouldn't be going into much details when it comes to basic, but definitely I would be explaining you the concept and how you what are the points which you need to keep in mind when you're dealing with genomics and proteomics. And as I have told you regarding the course content, from that it would be clear that genomics and proteomics I'll be dealing mostly in the bioinformatics part. Okay, so all right, to start with, omics is just a suffix given to various disciplines of biology that deals with different concepts, whether it is about a gene, about an mRNA, about a protein, or a metabolite. So here, as you can see, this particular arrow shows the actual sequence. It is nothing but how your sequence of events that happens in your body. Okay, this particular page can also describe about the central dogma of life, which is nothing but when a DNA replicates itself, or when DNA is transcribed to an mRNA and mRNA is translated to a protein. So that is based on what stage you are doing the studies. These are known as different omics. Okay, for example, if you're studying about the DNA, about different genes in your body, then it is called genomics. When you're dealing with say transcription and the mRNAs, then it is called transcriptomics. And then you are dealing with proteins, amino acids, then it is called proteomics. Once you know that a particular gene has been transcribed into an RNA and then translated into a protein, now it is have to express, right? So now how it express and what are the functions of these proteins that you study in metabolomics. Okay, here you are basically studying about different metabolites, how these metabolites take part in different biological process is what you study in metabolics. Okay, so in this class, we would be just dealing with genomics and proteomics, okay, in this workshop. Now, how do you decide whether to go with which type or which discipline, okay? Whether you need to analyze things based on what exactly is your requirement, okay? What's more important is for you to understand the question that you want to solve. For example, if you have a data, what kind of a data you have, what do you want to measure in this? Okay, if you have some experimental techniques, under what heading, subheading it comes, or what do you want to determine from that experiment, what you get as a result, how to analyze these comes in picture when it comes to bioinformatics. Okay, only the analysis part. Okay, the experiments are basically your wet lab work. Now, for example, I have just put an example over here. If we know the protein involved in a particular disease, then we can pursue the rational approach therapy wherein we know the protein. So either you can go with the wet lab work wherein you are synthesizing that protein or extracting that protein and then doing the further studies, or you can do a bioinformatics approach wherein you are actually looking for the already published data of that particular proteins. Okay, and then going ahead with its analysis part. Now, if we know, if also, it's not just the protein, if you also know the gene involved, we can devise the test to identify whether, like, how it expresses in a normal person as well as a diseased person. Okay, so it's not that if you know a protein, you know the gene exactly, right? Why it is not happening like that is what I'll be telling you in this class. Okay, apart from that, if you know the chromosomal location, if you, for example, now you know the protein, you know the gene also, now you know the gene's chromosomal location on the chromosomes. Okay, then what else do you want to know? Or if you don't know any of these stuffs, that you can find out from bioinformatics. Okay, so this is basically a slide that tells you about how we choose different modeled organisms. Okay, or why we choose the different model of organisms. Okay, when we say, when consider two individuals, when you consider two individuals, you see that there is a lot of dissimilarity between the two individuals. But then when it comes to the genome of an organism, then it is just about 0.001 to 2% difference. Okay, it's like you can say just two amino acids or two characters or two proteins different from that of the 100 complete proteins in an organism. Okay, when you see, think about the bacteria, here you can see it is 7%. Okay, that's only difference of 7% with that of the human. But also we would have come across where they say that people are actually evolved from chimpanzees. How have they come up with this statement? Well, that's from the bioinformatics tools, wherein they are analyzing different evolutionary concepts, and when they come up with the comparison of the genome of these of humans with that of the chimpanzees. Okay, so here we can see that it is 95 to 98% of chimpanzees genome is similar to that of human. Okay, and most of the studies involve the use of mice. That is because most of the genes that is expressed by a mouse, that is about 90% of these genes are similar to that of the human, and that's the reason why one of the best model organism is considered to be mice. Apart from that, you have rabbit. If you are testing about some particular pathway, then you go for C. elegans. That's one of the microbial organisms. Okay, also you have 36% similarity with when it comes to Drosophila genome. Okay, here you can so why do we need all these things? So for example, I'll tell you just one example, wherein if you're studying the effects of alcoholism on human. Okay, so now you see that uh, the gene which is required for metabolize alcohol is also present in Drosophila. So now if I want to see that if there's a mutation or how to overcome the sensitivity of alcoholism in human, instead of doing an experiment directly on human, I'll go with that of a Drosophila, right? So this kind of understanding about different organisms, its genome, is very much necessary for us to understand what metabolism or what are the events that's happening in a human. Okay, so now when I said in the first slide, central dogma of life, which is nothing but just DNA replicating to form a DNA, or it is transcribing to form an RNA, then translate to form a protein. But it's not this simple. So this particular slide actually gives you an information that it is not that simple. Okay, when I'm saying I'm going to study DNA, this I cannot say that it is just a random sequence of four basic nucleotides that is present that makes up the DNA, right? The sequence itself are very important, because the sequence itself gives a lot more information than just the basic structures of nucleotides. Okay, for example, here you can see very clearly that in a DNA there's a lot more than just the nucleotides. So you have a poly A signal, you have a 3' coding non-coding exons, then you have the stop codon, start codons, and these are very important when it is transcribing into an mRNA. So start codon is where you start the transcription, stop codon is where it stops. And once you transcribe to mRNA, it is called pre-mRNA and not directly RNA, because not everything that is encoded in your DNA is transcribed into a protein. Okay, there are a lot of stuff which are of not any use to us. Okay, those are called non-coding regions. Okay, here we need to understand and remember that in case of eukaryotes and prokaryotes, the genome is different. Okay, now if you are considering an eukaryote, we have exons and introns. These are nothing but the compartmentalization of a DNA in order for to show that it's like exons are the ones which will be transcribed and it would be expressed in a organism, but introns are just the non-coding sequences that does not express itself into a protein form. But our pre-mRNA is just copied exact the replica of what is DNA. Okay, apart from that, the basic structure wherein your thymine will be replaced with uracil. Okay, but apart from that, we also have transcription. After during transcription, we have the 5' capping of pre-mRNA, polyadenylation, and once this pre-mRNA is formed, it is not directly translated into protein. It is first need to be converted into a mature mRNA, which is nothing but it involves the splicing of these unwanted regions of the DNA so that only the protein of interest is expressed in a cell. Okay, that's when you get a translation wherein it is not directly the protein. Again, the translation doesn't mean it directly mRNA becomes a protein. It's a mRNA is converted into a sequence of a set of amino acids. Okay, the sequence in these are very much important. Okay, now this I wouldn't be getting into details of the codons, how these codon code for the amino acids, these things, but I'm trying to tell you that don't think in a very narrow perspective when you're going to do the work. Okay, you need to take into consideration all the points which are important for you to understand, and what exactly you want from your study is very important. Okay, so these amino acids, once converted, they are then sent and they are synthesized based on the needs of cells. Okay. Now, what exactly is genomics and proteomics? Now that we know what exactly is happening in our body, we need to learn about genomics and proteomics. So genomics is nothing but the subjects which deals with your genome. Okay, genome is nothing but the entire set of genes that is present in an organism. That is whether it is a human, chimpanzee, a bacteria, yeast, virus, anything. Okay, but a gene is a single unit, whereas a genome is the entire genes complete gene expression of an organism. And genomics is this where we study the genome of an organism, its structural parts, its functional parts, how it is affecting the body, where if there are any damages in this gene, or we have any kind of a mutations, how it is affecting. These are the things which we'll be studying in genomics. Similarly, proteomics is the study of proteome. Proteome is nothing but the entire set of proteins that an organism express. Okay. Okay. So genome is basically the what we are from inside. It is the basic unit. Units that it's nothing but a particular script. When you're doing acting, say for example, if you are going for performing a drama, then you need to have a proper script, not just with your dialects, but with all the dialects which are there, and when you have to say, right? So that is how is it the genome. Genome is nothing but the script that describes you, what you are, how you behave, what are the conditions that you undergo. Those are all defined by your genome. Okay. Also, we need to remember that this is again important. Second thing which is important is for you to understand what type of protein you want to study, because genome, when said in generalized form, just means the nuclear genome. But you have to remember that there are three types of genome which eukaryotic organism express, that is nuclear genome, mitochondrial genome, and plastic genomes. Okay, now how to decide these which genome to study is based on the characters which you want to study, whether that character is a result of a particular protein which is expressed in nucleus, or a particular protein that is expressed by the mitochondrial genome, or that of the plastic genomes. Okay, also one thing which we have to remember is not the complete script. As I told you, the when you are doing a play, you are getting a script which is having your dialogue as well as the other people's dialogue. Then for you, what's more important is your dialects, right? The rest is not important, but it is there for you to understand where exactly you have to put your actions, right? So that's how is the genome, wherein there is just out of the complete genome, only 2% of it is actually expressed. into protein forms. Okay, so this is when I'll be dealing further why this 2% is I have mentioned over here. In this is very important when you're considering what studies to do, whether it's genomics or proteomics. Okay, now, so we know that genomics is nothing but a complete genome. So what can be done with the sequence which we have? So we can either do a structural study, we can do the functional study, we can do the comparative studies. Okay, now what is structural genomics? Okay, but where do we get all these sequences from? Either it is the wet lab work or the bioinformatics tools, from where you get the already published data and you try to understand and get into detail of these information in order to find out more functions, and if you have noticed any particular metabolic disorders which is due to particular uh, say gene or a protein, that's when you will be understanding through your bioinformatics too. So here I'm just trying to say you that genomics, when you say about structural genomics, it's nothing but the structure of your genome that you're understanding, structure of your gene. For example, if you have considered one particular gene, then where exactly is the gene present in your chromosomes, at what position it is present, or what is the sequence of it, the nucleotide sequence of it, whether you have any particular region which is very conserved in most of them. Those things you are going to see in structural genomics. Functional genomics tells you about how these genes are expressed, what are its functions. Those things you learn in functional genomics. Comparative genomics is when you are trying to compare two different genomes in order to understand the evolutionary relationship between either the two proteins or between the two species or between the two individuals, is how you what you do in comparative genomics. So this is a slide which just tells you what I have already explained in the previous one, functional genomics, where you're trying to, functional genomics is nothing but a link between your genomics and proteomics, because once the gene is expressed, the structure is nothing but how it is expressed in the form of a protein is what you call, or understanding the phenotype of that particular gene is what you study. Okay, so it's a interlink between genomics and proteomics, and how genes interact with other proteins. Once it has interacted, how this affects the organisms of different metabolism is what you study in functional genomics. Coming to structural genomics is where, as I told you, is understanding the 3D structure. If you are trying to understand the DNA structure, then you will be going for the understanding of these structures. If you are just going for a particular gene which is very specific, then for that you don't have a structure, but you need to understand where exactly is the position in the genome, and how the surrounding of these genes affects the presence of this gene, how it is expressed, and how these are transcribed is what you will be learning in the structural genomics. Then mutational genomics is where you are trying to see, once you know particular gene, if there are any mutations, or you see, for example, here you can see this particular sequence is GGC-CCG. Okay, now there is a mutation which has turned this GGC to GAC, right? So how this particular mutation is affecting the overall function and structure of the gene is what you study in mutational genomics. Comparative genomics, as I told, is nothing but comparing two different genomes to understand the evolutionary relationship between two organisms. Now, what is important now that we have learned that genome is this particular thing, this is what we have to learn, what we are looking for, we have to be very clear, right? But what is a note of caution is that you have to be very clear about what you are looking into. Okay, here we are saying that, see, from here you can see that there is a difference, a lot of difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic genomes, right? So now genomes of prokaryotes doesn't contains exons. Okay, that is nothing but the expressing unit or the coding unit, which is completely expressed. It is not divided into introns and exons. Now, intron is a region of gene that is not expressed. Though it is transcribed to mRNA, during splicing, the introns are removed. Okay, once it is removed, you see only exons, which actually is translated into an amino acid sequence. So that's the reason when you're considering, you also need to consider the gene which you're considering is from a prokaryotic genome or a eukaryotic genome. Okay, here this is just an example of eukaryotic gene, which you can see that you have a promoter region, a transcription start site, then you have 5 prime untranslated or the UTR region, which is basically the non-coding region. This is not converted into your protein. Then you have the start codon. This start codon is nothing but your ATG, or you call, in case of mRNA, it is AUG, which actually is a signal for the proteins to actually, for the sequence to actually start translating into a amino acids. Okay, and then you have the coding region, and stop codon is the signal for it to stop synthesizing that particular protein. And then you have 3 prime UTR region, which is again nothing but your non-coding region, which wouldn't be translated into an amino acid. So all, though it sounds very simple that gene is nothing but a basic sequence of 4 basic nucleotides, that is adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, but there is a lot more that describes when it comes to how these sequences are placed in a gene. Okay, which is called sequence specificity. All right, the promoter region is where a protein binds and promotes the transcription of these particular genes. Okay, and then the transcription starts at the transcription start site, and this 5 prime UTR region is transcribed into mRNA, but it is not translated into amino acids. Okay, so in case of humans, as I said, see, you can see over here, this is a eukaryotic ones, which is just having these things. When it comes to, sorry, this is prokaryotic ones, wherein it is quite simple. You have a promoter region, transcription, then you have the start codon, stop codon, and the 5 prime and the coding region. When it comes to eukaryotes, it's more complex. Okay, here it's not only about the promoter and 5 prime UTR transcription start site, but you also have what you call it as introns and exons. Introns are the ones which are not expressed as amino acids, and exons are the ones which are expressed into proteins. Okay, so here we have, in this also you can see clearly that you have a start codon, then a donor site. These, or the acceptor sites, these are called donor or acceptor site because these are the regions where a protein bind for it to splice the introns out of the complete gene, and these are the regions where then the other protein binds to actually join these exons. So if I have one exon over here, one exon over here, this is removed, and then this part is joined with this part. Apart from that, the other very noticing feature of a eukaryotic gene is that of the presence of a poly-A tail, which is not present in prokaryotes. Okay, this is one of the distinguishing feature. Okay, so here is one caution about the genes is that, as I said you, the exons and introns. Okay, now again, one more thing which you need to remember is, it's not just the splicing. Even there are a lot of splice variants which are present. Okay, so now if you are dealing with the genome, there is a lot more which you need to study. You can't just say that, oh, this is the gene, these are the sequence, so I'm studying this sequence. These are ATGC. ATGC is the how sequence has been arranged in particular gene. No, when it comes to expression of proteins, you have even the splice variant. So as I told you, these are exons, intron, exon, intron, exon. Okay, now this could be spliced in such a way that all three will join together, forming, say for example, globin gene. Now if it is spliced, this intron is spliced, but then instead of all three joining, I have just these two join to form ova albumin gene. Okay, uh, okay, I wouldn't consider ova albumin gene, I'll just say globin gene 2. Okay, that is called splice variant. For example, if you consider a VEGF have many splice variants. Okay, VEGF1, VEGF2, VEGF6. Okay, and they actually have very different functions too. So when you're considering a genome, you're not keeping into your mind that they can be expressed into different variants. It's not just one particular. If you see the other one, if I'm saying, for example, NS1 is a protein which is expressed by an gene, but then the splice variant is NS2. Okay, NS2 is another protein which either NS1 will be expressed in an organism or NS2 will be expressed in an organism. Now, if NS1 is expressed, NS2 wouldn't be expressed because the some of the NS1 gene codes are actually shared by both NS1 and NS2. So if I'm saying that this particular exon 1 and exon 2 are joining to form NS1, and half of this exon 2 and exon 3 is joining to form NS2. Okay, so this is how there is a splice variant. In that case, if you want to study particularly about NS1 gene, I wouldn't recommend you to go for the gene studies. I would tell you to go for a proteomics study, right? Because you are trying to understand one of the part of the gene, not the complete gene, right? So that is how you need to decide at each and every step. So before going for any of these studies, you have to be very clear what exactly you are looking for, which organism you are looking for, and what are the outputs that you want, or what are the characteristics that you want to study is more important. Okay. And as also I said, not all the DNA codes for our proteins. You do the genomic studies only for the relationship studies. When you are trying to compare or to find out the evolutionary history of a particular organism, then you do a genomic study. Okay. Or if you are doing a study also, you need to be very clear that there are presence of these introns and exon sites, and how these are affecting different protein expression of that particular genes. Okay, apart from this, you also need to understand that in a genome there are multiple copies of a particular gene which exist. Okay, so that's when we come up with proteomics, which actually tells you the final stage. Okay, that is nothing but when the complete protein is expressed, that is where you study about what is actually going on. Okay, I may say that there is this particular genome, in this only 2% is being expressed. I don't know which is that 2%. That's not how it goes, right? You need to understand that which protein is expressed among them. Even though we are expressing hundreds of protein in our mRNA sequence, but not all 100 is expressed. It's only 80% of these, or the 80 proteins are actually expressed. And these also again depends upon the needs of a cell, that if a particular cell wants a particular protein at one single point, that protein is actually not needed at the second point. For example, if you are considering cell cycle, the proteins which you are which is necessary during your G1 phase are not necessary during your G2 phase or the synthesis phase. Okay, or when you are when I'm saying that when your proteins are necessary during your say, okay, let's consider this. When a normal person and a cancer person, you're saying definitely there is a lot of difference between the protein expression of a normal person and a cancer person. Apart from that, even if a protein is expressed in both, the function of that protein will be very different in these two both, right? So these type of differences that are the final expressions of a genome is studied through proteomics. All right. In proteomics, you are studying about the proteins, the post-translational modifications, how the biomarkers or a particular protein can be classified as a biomarker or a protein which is specifically expressed during this particular conditions, abnormalities, is what you study. Okay, here you study the kind and quantity of proteins, that is the protein expression, how much protein is expressed. If you're considering a particular protein, how much it is expressed in case of normal normal condition, and how much it is expressed in disease conditions is what you study. Apart from that, as we have post transcription modification, of RNA, wherein you are seeing the splicing, capping, all those things like that we have for when it is converted into an amino acid sequence also. Okay, when an mRNA is converted, mature mRNA is converted into an amino acid sequence, it is not directly going to synthesize the protein. You again need to have post-translational modification for you to finally synthesize a protein. And then we'll be also studying these protein-protein interactions, that is how it interacts with other proteins and how these interaction affect the functions of the proteins. Those will be studied in proteomics. Okay, so post-translational modification is nothing but wherein you are actually modifying the uh, amino acid sequence by, for example, say phosphorylation, by adding a phosphate group, or by glycosylation, by adding a glycosyl group. These actually makes the protein the function a lot different. Okay, so you would have come across in a different process wherein the phosphorylation is actually responsible for activation or inactivation of one particular pathway, or it is actually activating a particular protein. So these things also is very important when you are actually studying the structure of a protein. Okay, in a structured protein you have two structures. Okay, one is the inactive form and the active form. So this activation of the protein can be due to various reasons, and one such reason which has been noticed is phosphorylation. Phosphorylation of a particular protein actually helps it to be activated so that it can have the activated, so that it have the particular active sites wherein the other metabolites or a ligand or a DNA comes and bind for it to actually take up its function, the main function of a protein. So all these things needs to be very carefully studied before actually just jumping into understanding or studying different proteomics or genomics questions. Okay, apart from that, it's not only the activation, how this active the protein, how it is getting active is these changes, that is phosphorylation, glycosylation, or a cleavage at one particular site, actually alters the hydrophobicity of a protein. So that which actually hydrophobicity is nothing but it wouldn't be very stable, or it cannot withstand the water environment, right? So that actually determines whether the modified protein is expressed in your cytosolic or the membrane bound region. So this is one of the another point which we need to remember, that where exactly is a protein expressed is also very much necessary for us to understand a protein in detail. Okay, for example, if you are studying that a protein which is embedded in a membrane, it have a very different structure than that of the cytosolic one, because in membrane bond you need to have the structure which which can easily fit into a lipid bimembrane structure, right? It should have an interaction with the lipids, and also it is not have it should have either it should have a part of it which is hydrophilic, which can easily tolerate the watery environment, water conditions, and a part which is inside this lipid embedded inside this lipid bimembrane, which does not need to be hydrophilic, right? Or there are proteins which are completely embedded in the membrane and which does not have any hydrophilic region at all. Okay, so these are the some of the reasons or some of the points which we really need to keep in mind before going ahead with our studies, because it's not only the structure but the behavior of a protein, its activation and its functions are affected by these post-translational modification, as it is important for us to understand the post-transcription modification when we are studying about the RNAs. Now, how does all of this work? So, as I have been saying that genome, proteome, what exactly is it? So now we have a particular genome. It is expressed, which is called expressome. Expressome is nothing but the complete expression of an organism of those genes. Okay. Then you have the proteomes. This is nothing but your proteomics, where you study about the protein structure and function, how it behaves, everything, characteristics. Okay, then you have metabolome, how these proteins actually interact with each other to participate in different metabolism. So not specifically that one more reason which you have to be very careful is not all the proteins have one particular function. So there are proteins which are expressed in different conditions to take part in different process, biological process. So we need to keep in mind that even if we are studying a particular protein and thinking of suppressing it, it does not mean I'm suppressing only that particular process, biological process which I'm looking into, because this protein may also have functions in other metabolic pathways. So all these things or the initial studies can be done with different tools and servers which you can study from bioinformatics. Okay, if you want to find out about a particular gene, you have found out that this is the particular gene which is required for which is actually overexpressed in a particular conditions, then in order to understand whether this particular gene is expressed in which different models organisms, so that you can use those as model organism to study, or how these genes are affected by other genes can be studied in genomes, how these are expressed can in different conditions. So basically I'm trying to say is you don't have to do everything by yourself. There's a lot of studies which have already been done, which is making your work more less compared to you have to go through the whole thing. If you have found out a genome, just go on the line, use the different bioinformatics tools and find out that what exactly is the gene which it codes for, or where exactly it is located, or which are the organisms where you can study about these gene, how you can mutate these genes and study the effects, how it is affecting, plus as I said you, in what all metabolic process which it is involved in, that also you can study from bioinformatics tools. Okay, this is the initial work which clearly tells you how good can be your output. Okay, so for example, if I know a genome where I'm getting these data, either I have to do a wet lab work wherein I'm doing a DNA microarray or different techniques to actually find out the expression of genes, or screening of the already present genes, which I am doing to find out the genome. Once I find out the genome, I then go into the proteomes, proteomic studies, wherein you are studying the proteome of a particular organism to know that what exactly is this gene, where exactly is it present, what exactly protein is, what protein is expressed by this gene is what you study. Apart from that, you also study about the protein and ligand interaction, protein interactions, because this is one of the main reasons why even if a protein is expressed in some cells where it is not harmful, it the same protein when expressed in another cells having a protein 2, say protein A is expressed in cell 1 and 2. Now in one, protein A doesn't have any effect on cell 1, but it has effect on cell 2. This may be due to the presence of protein B, and this protein A and protein B interact, and that's when the protein A is getting activated and showing its effects. So these interactions become very much important. Apart from that, as I told you, that the different changes that we see in the structure can help us to actually mute, or what do you say it as, silence a gene. Okay, those things also you can study from bioinformatics tools. And then finally you're going for understanding the structure. If once the structure is known, you can find out particular ligands or the drugs which you can design particularly for one single protein for it to mute or stop its function. Okay, that's when you need to clearly understand about the structure of a protein. Now, what are the as I have been telling you timely, this is just a overall view where exactly is your genomics and proteomics used, and why do we have to use this. It's I'm sure most of you know that, and that's the reason you have taken up this class, wherein you have to see that it can be used for a novel diagnostic, wherein techniques like microchips and microarrays, which actually measures your DNA content, is developed based on the gene of interest. Once you know the sequence of your gene, based on those sequence, you actually develop these microarrays and microchips. And apart from that, if you know the RNA, then you study the gene expression. Then in proteomics, you study the proteomes, and all these have these chips and microarrays, different techniques which can be used for you to study. Okay. And then you why do you second thing why you do is, one is to diagnose, okay, wherein you can clearly say that overexpression of one particular gene or a protein can actually be a indication that this particular person is actually going undergo may get this particular disease. Okay. Apart from that, you can also do this in therapeutics, wherein you are trying to develop a drug or a therapy that actually stops the overexpression of one particular protein or the expression of a new completely new protein, so as to overcome the disease. Then in order to understand the metabolism, so that once you understand the metabolism, you clearly know how things work inside your body, and based on which you can definitely have further studies of how different diseases affects different conditions, metabolic conditions or metabolic processes. So once you have to understand a disease, as I told you, there are many online tools or website from which you can get all these information what I have been telling till now. Okay, if you want to study about some inherited diseases, you have one example is OMIM, which is nothing but your online Mendelian inheritance in man. Okay. This is a website wherein you can which is just a catalog of human genes, all the human genes and the disorders associated with it. Okay. Where it has a detailed study of the genome mapping, where particular gene is located, its history, the research of each of these traits and disorders which have already been done, which is very much important before you start any of your studies, because once you may have various kind of ideas about doing carrying forward your studies, but if it has been done already, you don't really have to waste your time in that. Instead, you can take the next step, right? So it's very important for you even to go through these literature based databases, wherein you will find already conducted data on those particular topics, right? And then you have also have different websites for particular infectious diseases, whether a bacteria for bacteria or virus. You have particular websites wherein you get the complete information about different infections, how these are caused, the gene involved, the protein involved in these infection, how these which gene is affected. All those things can be found out from these websites, which I'll be in the further classes I'll be explaining some of these websites and how you can access to these websites, and how you have to use different tools which are present in those websites will be explained in the further classes. And finally, once you know the gene, your protein, then how it is expressed, you cannot, as I told you, one particular protein is not exactly expressed in one particular bio process, right? Biological process. So in order to understand that, we have online tools which actually tells you, if you give a particular protein as your input, it actually calculates all the possible, uh, you know, metabolites or the proteins which it can interact with, or there are these are called neural networking. Okay, these are wherein you actually put up sequence or the query sequence, and you get a network of uh, you know network kind of data, wherein you can clearly see that how it interacts with different proteins, and how the in which all biological processes this particular protein is involved in. And even not just the proteins, but also particular in case if you're doing some of the neural networks where you specifically specify that you want to know all the just the metabolites which are important, you want to know, then those things can all be found also. Second. Okay. Yeah, I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. All right. So I was saying about how the different proteins are not just involved in one particular pathway, but it is involved in different pathways, and how if you are trying to mute a particular protein, how much effect it has on the other pathways is also very important for you to understand. These things you understand in metabolomics. So why do we have to do all these things? We know that when you're discovering a drug, for example, then you have to know that it's not just a single process where in one particular person perform all the activities, right? There are various stages. It's not just a matter of 3 years course which you are completing kind of stuff, but wherein you need to isolate. Once you know that you identify a particular disease which is seen in a particular patients, then you need to extract understand which exact protein is causing that. And once you understand the which protein is causing it, you need to understand the different metabolism which is involved in, and then how you have to extract those proteins, how are its expression in a normal person as compared to a diseased person. And once you extract that, you need to understand how these can be targeted, which actual region of these particular proteins, which is usually known as the active site, which needs to be targeted with a same man designed drug or a chemical which actually goes and binds to this active site and inactivates this particular proteins. Once this is found, it actually is cannot be directly injected into humans. It has to undergo a preclinical trial, whereas you actually try it on animals which actually express this gene, or how which actually takes consider that particular metabolisms is also seen in that particular animal. Once you do that, then you actually scale up to a human, which is clinical trial 1, wherein you study the formulation, how much of dosage is important to for it to not have the side effects. And even if you have the even you study the side effects of these particular formulation, what are the dosage, at what time you need to give, how it is affecting. All these things you will be studying in preclinical studies, wherein you have very small group of people, both normal as well as the disease conditions, and you try to understand how it is affecting both normal and the diseased patients. Okay, this usually consists about 100 to 1000 individuals. Once you do the clinical trial 1, then you go for the clinical trial 2 and 3, which are just increasing the number of uh, people for which you will be trying. Apart from that, there are other criteria which you have to study, and also you will be seeing these for about 2 to 10 years to understand what are the side effects, whether if the disease is reverting back, if a person treated with this completely is okay now but may even get the disease back after 2 to 3 years. All these things studies will be done for around 2 to 10 years, sorry, for around 10 years, and then only finally the FDA will approve, which will be available into markets. So all these things, though it looks very simple, there's a lot more which you need to understand and think before going for any of the studies. Okay. Now, what I'm going to teach you people in this workshop is the initial process wherein you are trying to understand the genes and the proteins which are already available on data, and trying to understand the concepts. Also, these data are already present. So you have large biological data which is available, wherein you have different database. You have for gene sequences, gene expression data, that is nothing but your microarray data, mass spec data, protein-protein interaction data, chromatographic data. Now, which is more important is for you to understand what exactly you want, and you have to go with that particular database which actually gives you that particular information. If you want a mass spec data of a particular protein, you have to go to that particular database itself. If you run around searching in other databases, you're just wasting your time. Okay. So based on the data, there's a huge data, as I said. The databases are basically of two types. One is the primary database and the second is secondary database. Primary database is where you have the direct data, whatever data you get from mass spec or sequencing, you directly go you get those sequence data or those data, mass spec data, directly as a raw data into these primary databases. Example, you have many, like you have NCBI, National Center for your biotechnological information. Then you have EMBL, European based database. Then you have XPC. Then very sequence or the organism specific databases. Also you have, so for example, if you want to search for an influenza virus, then you have NCBI influenza database. So these database which you have the raw data is known as your primary database. Secondary databases are those which takes the data from these primary databases, clubs up, and actually give you a more detailed information of the proteins or the gene you are looking into. For example, if I want to study for say a protein, the sequence I will get in primary database, but secondary database takes the sequence from this, compare it with the other sequences, and actually, so you have these cat and scope. So these are the databases which actually tells you about the scope. If you say, it gives you the information about the structural classification of the proteins. Okay, it takes your nucleotide or the amino acid sequence from one database, the protein structure from another database, trying to understand the correlation between these, and then it analyzes with that of the other databases, which gives you about the structural information about these protein, and then it classifies the protein based on other proteins related to it. Okay, so that type of protein classification based on structure is what you get it from structural scope, which is nothing but structural classification of proteins. Similarly, cath is where you are classifying these proteins into your based on your class, architecture, topology, and homologous superfamilies. That is how it is related to other proteins. All right. So the different databases and servers that you have, this is just an example wherein I'm trying to show you that how many different, these are just say around 1% of the databases which you actually have in whole on the net. Okay, you have different literature database like PDB, which where you get all the information about already what has been done on these the particular protein, the studies which have been done. Then database concerning to mutations, which says you if you are studying about a particular protein and you have seen that this is the mutation that you have seen in a particular disease conditions, that you can already find out in these databases, wherein it tells you this is nothing but you. One example I'll give you, SNPs, which we'll be looking into in our further classes, wherein your single nucleotide polymorphism, how one particular nucleotide changes in a gene actually affects or has an effect on a human, and different diseases are caused. These and how it is distributed among a population is also can be seen in a SNP database. Apart from that, you have mapping databases, which gives you the details of if you're saying a particular gene, in which chromosome. You know that we have 24 sets of chromosomes. So in which chromosome it is present, at what location, whether it is in the P arm or it is in the Q arm, and next to it, what are the genes which are present, whether if we target this, it affects the other genes next to it. All these things you will get the data in your mapping database. Then your metabolic databases, which tells you about the different biological process in which your particular protein is expressed. Or you can directly go to these databases trying to understand, say you have seen some abnormalities in a particular biological process or metabolic process, then you can directly go for this metabolic database, search for that metabolic process, and try to understand what are the genes related to it, or what are the proteins related to it, and then finally go with that particular protein or gene. The nucleic acid sequence database, then protein information resources, wherein protein information is where you have all the structural and functional information. Nucleic acid sequence database, that gives you the sequence. Apart from this, you need to understand what is computer aided drug discovery, which is at the next level. So what we are learning here is just the basic. This comes, as I told you about the neural networking, that comes under computer aided drug discovery, where if you choose the one particular protein, then it does a virtual screening of that one particular protein and tries to find out all the possible interactive molecules or interactions that it shares with the other proteins, molecules, DNA, ligands, everything. Okay, then Or you can have the Genova drug design, wherein you yourself are understanding the structure of a protein and trying to design a particular drug towards it, and then you can put it into the database and try to understand whether it will actually work out or not, instead of directly going for your in vivo work. Okay, then you have different tools for gene predictions. You have for open reading frame finding. So open reading frame is nothing but the region of the gene which actually tells you about the exons. Okay, that is the coding sequence in a gene is known as open reading frame. Okay, so if you have a gene sequence, you need to find out whether what is the gene coding region in this. Then you have different tools which actually tells you about these ORF regions in that particular genes. Then you have metagenomics, wherein you are trying to understand different genomes conditions, both structural and functional ways, and also the process or the biological process metabolisms which it is involved in. Then you have next generation sequencing, which actually tells you about the complete genome sequencing. Okay, the best example I can give you is, as we all know, human genome project, which is the one of the best gift that scientists have got actually, so that now we are able to locate each and every gene, where exactly is present on the chromosome, how it is expressed, those things. The complete sequence of the complete human genome is also we get it from human genome sequencing. Apart from that, when it comes to genomics, what exactly you study is, I will just divide it into three parts. One is linkage mapping, wherein you are trying to find these microsatellites and mini satellites. Microsatellites are nothing, microsatellites and mini satellites, or these satellites are nothing but a small sequence of the genes, which encodes around 10 to 100 base pairs. So micro, if you're considering, it's just 2 to 10 base pairs of sequence, and mini if you're considering 10 to 100 base pair sequences, which are presented in many copies in a DNA, and this actually gives a footprint of your DNA. Okay, and it is very these are the ones which are very prone to mutations, but the sequence and how it is distributed among the genome, actually it gives you the evolutionary relationship. Or if you are that is what you do it when you are going for a parental DNA testing. Okay, then you have the banding patterns, wherein you can study the karyotype, how these chromosomes are arranged. These banding pattern chromosomes, if you're studying based on the bioinformatics, you will get to know that which particular chromosome is in excess. So basically to study the chromosomal abnormalities. Okay. Apart from that, we have contig maps, which is nothing but wherein you have a particular gene of interest which is being expressed in a bacterial system or yeast system, and these are stored into a library form. So these can be studied in contig maps. Then you have sequence stack sites, which is nothing but your that deals with your microsatellites and mini satellites. And then SNPs, which we'll be studying, which is single nucleotide polymorphism, how one particular mutation in one particular nucleotide or the replacement of one nucleotide with the other is actually having different disease conditions, is what you study in genomics. In proteomics, we'll be dealing with the primary structure, secondary structure, how to predict the secondary structure, and tertiary structure. In tertiary structure, we can see the homology modeling is the basic one, wherein based on your sequence and related protein structure, you are going to design the structure of the gene of your interest. Okay, the protein sequence, if you have maybe an amino acid sequence, you don't know the what structure it will be, you can develop from homology modeling. So these are some of the tools. Swiss PDB viewer, which is an online tool wherein you don't need to know the coding language, you just have to understand the what are the inputs and what are the outputs. So this we'll be dealing with. Then you have modeler, wherein you can very specifically specify what are the conditions under which you want to design a protein structure. Okay, then you have threading. This is a second step, wherein if the sequence, you don't have a structure of your structure which is closely related to your sequence, then you go for these threadings, which is ITESR and PIRE are some of the tools which you can use, but these things wouldn't be covered in this workshop, as it is the next level and it requires more time. And ab initio prediction is wherein you don't have any related structure. This is a completely new protein whose structure you want to predict. All right. So then once you have predicted the structures, you will be visualizing how good is your structure through different database tools or these web servers which are available. So these are the tools: RasMol, MolMol, and PyMol. And this is a Swiss PDB viewer. So maybe we can go ahead with the Swiss PDB viewer, and apart from this, VMD also we can use. So I'll be showing VMD to visualize our structure which we would be creating. Then docking is the next step, wherein once you get the protein, now you want to see which are the interacting partners with this, or you want to dock, like particular, you want to design a particular molecule which can actually get into its active sites and inactivate it. That is called docking, and you have different docking softwares which we wouldn't be doing in this workshop. Okay, like you have Autodock, then you have Schrodinger, Discovery Studios. These are the ones which you can use for docking. Okay, with this, I have come to the end of today's. Okay, still we have 2 minutes. I'm sorry it extended, but now the section will be open for all of you. For if you have any doubt, you can just post it. Thank you. Okay, so first question is this technique also used in plant disease and pest management? Yes, definitely. Genomics and proteomics, I didn't say it's particularly to human. Yeah, though I have been using most of the example in humans, it can definitely be used in plant disease and pest management. Any other questions? Yes, it can be used in cancer therapy as well, wherein we can see that clearly there are databases which is particularly says about all the informations related to a cancer or the studies which have already been done. So maybe if you are interested, I can say you this website when I go through the further classes, wherein you get these information about cancer particularly, and what are the genes which are involved in different cancers, their expression profiles, all these will be given in those things also. So definitely you can use in any disease, any organisms. It's not just humans nor plants. It can be done in bacterial studies, viral studies, anything. What purpose do introns serve since they get discarded anyways? Well, those studies are still going on. Not much study have been done on introns, and for now we know that those are the non-coding regions. Yes, definitely. I'll be sharing, Shivani, I'll be sharing that cancer if you're interested in. And there are many websites which you can look into for detailed studies of this. Genome can be sequenced to cure a disease. Yes, one of the, you can have this example, particular example wherein the whole genome sequencing was actually successful in treating one of the patient, which was a child. They screened him for a particular disease, and they found out that this particular proteins were actually defective in those in that patient, and they found out, and then they gave a bone marrow therapy, and he was actually cured. So yes, it is used to cure disease also, genome. Applications in the identification of plant virus resistance. Yes, you can do that. So if you know, so here when it comes to plant virus resistance, you need to know which virus exactly you're looking for. And in proteins, in plants also, you again, as I said, they have different databases for plants as well, where you can search for these particular virus, or you can, if you are directly go into the viral databases, then you will get the about information about the virus. Try to study. So any questions that you have, try to study the basics of this before getting into your studies. Okay, then we have, okay, one second. How do we correlate epigenetics with genomics? Well, as you know, epigenetics is nothing but your environmental effects on the genes. Like it's not your, as I said, you now we have, for example, omen, which actually tells you about inherited disease. So your epigenetic is nothing but the genetic mutations that you see due to the effects of the environment, right? Like you have when you see the UV induced genetic mutations, those things. So those genomic those things also you can do it, because epigenetics is nothing but your mutations in your genes. So that will definitely help you out in, for example, if you are trying to find out a particular mutations, and you know that due to epigenetics this is a mutation which is have caused, you can search or you can study those effects of those mutations and how this particular gene is involved in different metabolisms, so that you will understand how its effects. Okay, can I share this PPT? Okay, that I'll talk to, I guess you people will be getting your videos. So for the further tutorials, do we need any software pre-installed in our devices? For next class, I'll be discussing mostly the online tools for how you will be, say, sequence retrieval, how you do, and the prediction of ORF and exon. So you don't need for tomorrow, but then further, if you want, you can have this VMD software, so that install, so that that is, but it would be in your third class, wherein you are predicting your not third class, finally in fourth class or fifth class, because first you have to understand how to retrieve a data, then how to predict those data, what exactly are the structures, then you have to develop a structure, and then finally go for your validation. So only the validation I'll be doing through software, rest and all we'll be using the web servers. Okay, then genome sequencing complete in plant also, rice also? Yes, you have already in some of the plants which are already completed, and you can have, I guess rice they have, that's the reason. And even you have this particular information about different varieties of plants and how they have developed those varieties. All those information is already available. Will you explain regarding genome sequencing in further classes? Genome sequencing, I wouldn't be getting into detail of these, because today was, as it was an introductory class, because genome sequencing, if you're saying about the different techniques which are used for sequencing, definitely no, because it's a wet lab one, and as I told you clearly, I will be handling the bioinformatics part. But as and when necessary, definitely I'll be giving you the information what exactly is those things for. Can you please explain more about micro and mini satellites, how they are involved in Petronel testing? So these satellites are, as I said, sequence tagged STCs. So these are those which are labeled sequences. Okay, these micro and mini satellites are, excuse me, are nothing but a sequence, a very small sequence, or which you call it as repetitive sequence, which is present in every individual. And the distribution of these sequences, since it is a repetitive sequence, it is distributed throughout your genome. Okay, and this distribution is very specific for a specific person. Now based on these distribution, they actually find out. So when you say that the 50% of your genome is similar to that of your mother or your father, that is when they see, they actually go with this STCs, which is sequence tagged ones, and see how it is expressed and at what different. So that's a particularly a complete technique, which I don't want to get into detail, but you just need to know that the distribution of these particular sequences are very specific for people. Okay, can I get presentation file which you thought today? Okay, you will be getting the video, so I don't think so you'll be requiring that. How can we distinguish a protein and one of its mutant, and how to know exactly where the mutation has been occurred? So this is where you will be, I'll be teaching in your further classes how to understand a particular mutation, because not all the mutations. So as most of you would be knowing, there are three types of mutations, which one is nonsense mutation, wherein your particular amino acid is replaced with another amino acid, but this actually causes it to be a stop codon. So the protein is not completely expressed and it stops over there. Then you have missense mutations, which is nothing but a complete different amino acids is introduced, okay, which actually have a complete effects on its structure, but again, one single mutation not necessarily have an effects on the functions. There are only very few mutations which actually have. So these mutations are disease specific and your abnormality specific. So I cannot say that this particular mutation is actually effective. Okay, and these mutations can be just because of the structure. So if you're considering an alanine which have a side chain of just hydrogens, right? But if you're considering a tryptophan, it has a ring structure in its side chain. So obviously it will affect the total complete structure as well as the hydrophobicity of that particular protein. So those things I'll be discussing in detail, and these mutations, how it is affecting the structure, I'll be showing you during our homology modeling class. Let me open. If introns are responsible for disease, how can we further explore it? Introns basically, I don't think will be responsible for disease. So, but there are methods wherein you are actually targeting your introns in order to stop the expression of a particular protein. Since these are the non-coding regions, you can definitely target those. So which is usually in case of your mRNA. So if you are targeting an mRNA, which you call it as siRNAs, or you have short sequence RNAs, wherein microRNAs, these are the techniques which you actually use for targeting a particular RNA. So this targeting can be your intron regions also, but as far as my knowledge goes, most of them targets exons only. Introns, not, they don't target that much. I mean, like, people are not having so much not much into introns. Okay, then you need a brief account. I guess that wouldn't be necessary, because every class, whatever I'll be teaching you, I'll definitely tell you, because again, if I brief it now, it will take time. And second thing being that you will forget it. So every class, so I have distributed in such a way that first we'll be finishing with genomics, then proteomics, and then going into details. So whenever I'm doing those things, I'll first give you a brief introduction of what I'll be doing and what are the things which you need to keep in mind, and then I'll go ahead. That would be much better, I feel. Can we do practicals on Android phone? Yeah, if you not the VMD part, visualization part, but yeah, you can do it. It's online tool, so anywhere you can analyze it. Even if you are doing it on Android, then instead of VMD, I can use online server tools like you have Swiss PDB viewer, wherein you get a complete information. So that's fine with it. How are genome and proteome related? Well, as I said you, the structural genomics, wherein if you want to study the structure of a genome, its expression profile, then you need to understand about the proteomics also, because genes are finally converted into proteomics section. Okay, so it's already 10. So thank you, everyone. Any doubts, we'll solve it tomorrow. And I don't think so you should be having any doubts regarding this. Thank you so much.